Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Devils Insiders podcast on this December 2nd, 2015. November is gone. Jeff O'Connor, Dave Turner with you, and the Devils are 2 full months into the season right now, and they are right in the playoff mix due to their very solid play of late. They've had some losses here and there, but they've had some very good wins. They put themselves in a position, gosh, we're almost at the 1/3 poll here, and the Devils are right in the mix. And Dave, I know we didn't expect this, and I know it's kind of the running theme here for most Devils fans, but we're getting near the 1/3 mark, and the Devils are no longer in a playoff spot, but they are, a few wins away from being right back in the postseason mix. So they're still in the hunt.
Yeah, I think it's pretty unbelievable considering that we were expecting this team to be maybe bottom 3 before the year started. And now I think even of course with the loss to Colorado, but also coupled with some of the wins they've had lately, I think they've proven that they're not going to go away this year. I'm not saying that they're going to make the playoffs. I think that'd be a bold statement to say that right now, but if you look at the talent around the rest of the Eastern Conference, including what could possibly be a wild card team or two coming from the other division, a lot of those teams are pretty mediocre. Ottawa has been decent, but Boston's okay. Detroit's okay. Florida struggled a little bit. It might come down to a couple of points, which it's interesting looking at them dropping another home game to a non-playoff team last night. But I think they're going to be right there, which is great because we'll have good hockey to watch all the way up through April.
Yeah, I'm really, for the most part, not impressed, if you will, with the conference. I know the Rangers are good. The Capitals are off to a rocking start. Yeah, but I'm really not impressed. There's no reason they shouldn't be in the mix as long as they kind of stay the course of where they are. As long as there's not too much of a dip in their play and their results, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be in the mix. I think this year what they're doing more than anything, and obviously the new system has helped and everything. I think there's a chip on the shoulder of this team that, not that they were picked to miss the playoffs, but the fact that so many teams had them being a top 4 worst team in the league when, they got rid of some dead weight, some dead weight personnel. They actually added some younger player. They added Kyle Palmieri. They added John Moore, who was looking for an opportunity to play somewhere. Lee Stempniak, who's a decent middle 6-piece wherever he's been. I think they've kind of got a chip on their shoulder. And to make a reference and a comparison, if you will, to perhaps a team that a lot of our listeners are a fan of, a team right across the Passaic River, the New York Red Bulls this past year, got rid of their coach. They got rid of their GM. They brought in a whole new system of play. They brought in a bunch of new players, and they ended up having the best record in the conference. Now, I'm not saying the Devils are winning the Eastern Conference this year. That's just, as fun as this year has been, that's just not in the cards. But for the most part, they've been playing. They've been doing everything right. There's been very few bad games this year, if you will, as opposed to last year. You could probably count before we got to Christmas. There was maybe 6, 7, 8 games where you just wanted to throw your remote at the television. There really hasn't been that game, or if there has been that game this year, it's maybe only happened once, maybe 2 times where you've been just totally infuriated. Other nights, as long as you're expecting this team to be, what they were at the beginning of the season, there really hasn't been very many games to be upset at.
No, and outside the first 3 games where they were pretty lackadaisical against Winnipeg, Washington, they got throttled pretty good, but Washington's going to do that to a lot of good teams this year. And then the Nashville game. Maybe the only other game that I could say that they really didn't look great was the first Columbus game this year, where they really were never in it. Even the second game, they had what should have been a goal, at least it seemed like it. And even last night, they were in it. They were playing relatively well. So I think that is a marked difference that even the losses are competitive,
yeah,
which is good because, look, you're going to win some of those games because you're in it late, as we saw with the Montreal game. That if you hang around and you're still within striking distance, you can find a goal late. It doesn't have to be pretty. There's no style points, and that's the nice thing from them so far is that. Also, the one point I think, I don't know if it's so much the coaching or just the player's ability, but it seems like they've answered the bell every time they needed to this year. Whether it's beating the Rangers in that game in overtime after they had the really bad start, and all of a sudden that changed their fortunes, or it was beating Chicago after losing to the Islanders in that game in Brooklyn. I almost said the island, or even going and beating Vancouver after losing to Edmonton and Calgary, that they needed that game. Or even the Montreal that we just saw, the game up in Montreal after losing 2 games in a row there, that they've been able to kind of figure out a way to not let losing streaks happen, and that it seems like they're really stepping up when it matters to win a big game, which is something that they didn't do last year.
Right, that's why they are right above 500, and hopefully that they can kind of duplicate 12 wins for every 9-10 losses. Hopefully they'll be they're on target to be right in the mix of a lot of teams in years past who have made the playoffs. You're just under that 40-win mark. You've got some overtime losses. That normally puts you right in the conversation for a playoff. Well, if you joined us for the last podcast, you mentioned it, Dave, that there was going to be an insanely tough 10-game stretch starting that Halloween night, that Halloween afternoon against the New York Islanders, where they had a lot of tough games in the area. Then the West Coast trip. We said if they can survive that, I said at the time, I believe if they got 8 or 9 points, I would have been happy with that. Well, on that 10-game stretch, they went 6-4, so they got 12 points out of it. There was even maybe a game or two they could have won that they lost on that trip, and vice versa, obviously. But they played very well in a tough stretch. You play the Blackhawks, the Islanders, Vancouver to finish out the trip. They did much better than I would have thought they would have. And they've continued to score a lot of goals this year. The offense really hasn't, even if they've only scored maybe 1 goal or if they've been shut out. The offense, to me, ever since the Ranger game, has always looked, I'm trying to find the right word here, has always been in the mix. They've always really now, the last month and a half, they've had a lot of good scoring chances every night. And to me, that's more important than anything, is that the chances are there. And for a lot of nights, they have scored 2 goals. They've scored 3 goals. The chances are coming. They're creating them because of this system the way it is. And they won a lot of games because of it. And it showed definitely over that 10-game trip. The offense was definitely there.
Absolutely. The offense, I think, to echo your point there, they just seem much more dangerous. That at any point they can go and score a goal. Not even the late game stuff, but just the idea that with these top 2 lines, and we'll get the idea to we'll get into the idea about the third line and the fourth line struggling in a little bit. But the top 2 lines have been great, and you get that feeling that, like teams that have real offense, which is something that this team hasn't had for a couple of years. The way this game is built is that at any point your good players can take over a game. Are they as good as some of the other top lines in the league? Not quite, but the fact is that they have this ability to score in bunches at times. I mean, they've scored 4 goals plus 6 times this year, which isn't bad. They're not amongst the league leaders in offense, but I think you see them as a much more dangerous offensive team than in years past.
Yeah, you know what? And that brings up a good point. Maybe the talent's not there, but sometimes chemistry is even more important than talent. Like we talk about that Ryan Carter, Steve Bernier, Steve Giunta line from a few years ago. They went up against whoever, anyone's third, fourth line. They went out in the playoffs and whatever. If you want to say they took, just for the hell of it, let's say 500 shifts, something like that. They probably went out there for 430 of those shifts and dominated the other opponent. So it really just depends on chemistry. And really, up until last night's game against Colorado, we'll get to some of the Devils' most recent games in a moment. Especially the top 2 lines, John Hynes really hasn't had to shake them up at all. It makes your life so much easier when you can really just go out there and you throw the same lines out there every night. You don't, if that's one of your least, normally that's a big coaching decision every night. But when it gets to the point where that's one of the easiest decisions, it makes the job so much easier as a coach. I think those Kings teams, if you watch those Kings teams in the playoffs since 2012, I really can't recall. What's this? Oh, Daryl Sutter. I can't recall him ever really shaking the lines up. It seemed like, maybe he would tinker some guys in the fourth line, but really his top three lines were always set. He didn't have to move anyone around. He didn't have to shake up any defensive pairings, anything. And I think sometimes if you can find that chemistry, forget the talent, that makes life so much easier for a coach. And for the top two lines up until last night, they haven't had to change much of that. So sometimes the chemistry takes over instead of talent.
Well, from a coaching perspective, though, it also makes it easier because you're looking at a line where you know their tendencies because they've been together for so long now that you can look at what you're seeing, and you can also in practice work with them. It's so much easier than not knowing where you're going to put guys night in and night out because, you put a different player. Say they were going to throw, I don't know, Elias on the first line because Stempniak was really struggling or something like that. All of a sudden, it changes the complexion of that line in that you can't have them do some of the same things necessarily because Stempniak has a lot more speed than Elias does at this point. I think from a perspective for Hines, especially as a rookie head coach with, all the different things that are on his plate right now, it is a big thing. And even the defensive pairings have been the same pretty much too, save for Schlemko coming in and out of the lineup. And I'm sure Coach Hines can't wait to get one of Merrill and Jelena off the ice. But the top four have not changed at all. I mean, that's another thing is that you haven't had to worry about the defense really other than where is Schlemko going to fit in. And I think that roster stability is a big thing moving forward because, maybe if they want to make a small trade for a third liner because the third line isn't really producing, they can do that because they know exactly what they have at the other parts of their roster.
The Devils most recently going back-to-back games against Montreal, losing in a shootout in the first leg, if you will, and then the second night up at the Bell Center, Devils coming up with a tremendous victory, getting the overtime winner. And really it was a flip of two scripts. Both teams had 2-0 leads at one point, got the next two scored on them, and then yielded the winner either in the shootout or overtime. But I think that trip for Devils fans has given them a lot of hope. Yes, they could have won Friday night, but then winning Saturday night I think was just as important. As long as you're going to win one of the games, that kind of set you up for success. And now, we've seen them take on the best now. Pick out a team. Rangers, Blackhawks, Canadians, you can go down the line. They've risen to the challenge against the best in the league. Now, does that equate to they can take on anyone in a 7-game series, or they'll even get to the playoffs? Doesn't mean much right now, but the fact that they're not getting their doors blown off by anyone, or the fact that they're just as much pushing the tempo and dictating the pace of play, I think speaks about the system John Hines has put in here. That they're well set up for the future. To see so much success, even little pieces of success here in year one, that gives I think a lot of hope for the future, and that this coach hopefully will be a guy who can be here for a long time. We thought Pete DeBoer was here a long time, coaching. What did he coach? 3 seasons and change. That felt like an eternity. Hopefully, he's a guy here who there's a 5+ year plan in place for him, and the fact that he'll contribute to that himself with getting his players to play that system well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a rebuilding year. Whether we forget that, whether we don't want to call it that anymore, it is a rebuilding year. And the fact that Hines has done so well and seemed to know all the right buttons to push with this team, you have to give him credit. I mean, he's exceeding expectations. I think Shiro knows him, from his Pittsburgh days. But really, when you look at him and what he's done with this team, I think he's, I always talk about Dave Tippett, who's the Arizona Coyotes coach, who I think gets more out of his players than anyone in the league. And you're seeing it this year because the Coyotes are pretty good. But I think you're seeing that with Hines, that he's getting this roster to do everything. I mean, it helps that he has a goalie that's I think without a doubt a top 5 goaltender at this point in the league. That makes things a lot easier. But look, he's a Jack Adams candidate right now. He really is.
Yeah, and you know what? I think at the beginning of the season when they asked him, what's your goals? What do you want out of this year? I think he constantly repeated the same line, which was, we want to maximize whatever it was, either the production, I forget the exact term, but he used the verb maximize, and he's speaking to each player's talent, potential, production. You want to maximize players. And you could say this has got to be the most dangerous top 2 line production we've seen in a long time. The fact that I know he's cooled off quite a bit, but Travis Zajac got off to a fast start. Mike Camilleri, Adam Henrique, Henrique's got 10 goals. Camilleri's right there as well. Kyle Palmieri has fit in seamlessly, has almost looked like a leader out there at times with his scrappy play as well. They haven't gotten this much out of their top 2 lines, since the 2011-2012 season we're probably talking.
I think it's definitely
a little snake bit talent-wise the last few years at the top 2 lines. This is easily the most, and he said he was going to maximize talent, and for the most part, you can look down everyone on the roster, or at least look at the top 18 skaters for this team. We know about the goalies. The goalies are fine. There was really nothing to fix there. But of the 18 guys who have consistently been on the roster, he's probably gotten 13 or 14 of them to play their best hockey, or at least continue their best hockey under him.
Yeah, it's impressive. It really is. Wherever they end up here, I think they have a good coach, and they have a coach that will win in the future. Look, you're going to get Pavel Zacha next year, probably, whether they make a trade or sign someone. They're gonna be an even better team next year, probably, especially even if Reed Boucher can finally figure it out. He's been better in Albany lately, because right now they're a 2-line team. But excuse me, I do think that we're seeing some really good things for the future. Maybe not in terms of roster makeup, because if you look at the roster, there's not a lot for 5 years from now necessarily yet. Mm-hmm. But the coach, I think, is someone who will be the mastermind of this, especially because, look, Ray Shero, you got to give him credit too, because look at the guys who he signed. Everybody who he signed has looked pretty good so far, so I think you got to give him credit for that as well.
Let's talk about some of the players and how they've kind of fit in here. Elias has made his return to the lineup, and he had the first goal in that comeback against Montreal, and I know he started on the 3rd line, which I think was the right move, to really not tinker, not mess with anything, just kind of stick him on a line, let him kind of play, get some repetitions with the same guys, and kind of let him find his way in. I think his smarts bring a lot to this team. I'm not sure he has much left in the tank, skating skill-wise anymore, but the fact that he, positionally knows where to be, he can still grind it out in the corner. I think that brings some element of help to the team. But he has looked solid so far, considering they don't need him to be right now. They don't need him to be a top 4, top 5 player on this team. He can kind of fit into that role, as opposed to last year where, he was considered to be one of the better players on the team. And by the end of the year, Pete DeBoer had him playing on the 4th line. I think he fits a little better to this year, even though, he hasn't wowed you with his game yet.
Yeah, I think the one thing about him is that I would think this is going to reinvigorate him playing on a team, especially now playing on a line with players that can actually score. Compared to last year where they were just so lost and they couldn't do anything. I think he wants to be a part of this, where he's kind of the last holdover, of the old guys from the Cup years with Marty gone and Lou gone, that he's the elder statesman right now. No Yager even to be, older in terms of years, where, I think that he wants to finish strong, because his, even on a selfish side, his numbers are going to be scrutinized for the Hall of Fame. If he can put up 30 more points this year or so, it doesn't hurt his case, because he's going to be someone that's going to be close to that threshold to make the Hall of Fame. I think he should be, because if you look at, he played on defensive teams and still put up numbers, but that's for another day. I like what I've seen from him so far. The only thing about Elias is that as he's gotten older, I don't know how much, maybe you'll agree with me on this, Jeff, but he seems like he gets a little whiny sometimes.
Sure.
And I just wonder if they go into a losing streak and he isn't scoring and so on and so forth, or God forbid he gets bumped down to the third line again, if he doesn't possibly become a problem in the room just because it's a new coach and he's been here so much longer than all the other guys pretty much. I don't think it'll happen, but some part of me believes that if things don't go right for him, that you can see him maybe check out a little bit. I don't know.
I think he'll be a good soldier, and the reason I think that is because his contract's up. So if he causes a problem and people know that he's not the player he was, and he causes a locker room problem, not that he's looking to leave New Jersey and go play somewhere else, but if he is, I think that would all but kill his opportunity to go play somewhere. If you can't produce and you're not a good guy in the room, what's the point of anyone even giving you whatever, $1 million and a half a year to go come play for their team? I can't see it. So I think for that alone, I think he'll be a good soldier, and the fact that he's already found his way, a few games in here, that he's already getting some second line reps. I think he'll be all right. I don't think there will be a lot. I don't think there'll be a lot of noise out of his camp. Sometimes there is during the courses of years. He's often a guy who, talks to Rich Shear, and Shear normally is able to get a interesting quote out of him every year where it makes you say, well, why is he saying this now? I don't think you'll see that this year, hopefully.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a few more guys on the team up front that are interesting guys. We knew they would be interesting guys when they brought them in this year. Sergei Kalinin, and they just signed Tyler Kennedy. He's played a handful of games as well, so we'll talk about these two guys. Sergei Kalinin, I think they're still looking to unlock some consistency and still harness some of that raw potential. But I think we've seen when he's on his A game, he's a bull out there, man. He'll go bang guys around. He can dig pucks, pry him away from guys. He's got that great strength, and he can carry the puck as well. I've been super impressed with, I guess you could say, the rawness of his game. It's not fine-tuned just yet, but as far as being a guy who has something different about him, I think Sergei Kalinin has been a help to this team. And then, Tyler Kennedy, I need to see a little bit more. It's tough to judge him just yet, but he always played great roles on those Penguins teams. He scored so many big goals as a fourth-line player. He was – I don't think he had his best year with the Islanders last year, but I like the move bringing him into camp on a PTO. Obviously, they didn't give him a contract. It's always good to just have an extra guy down there, and Kennedy's not super fast, but he can skate better than Devils fourth line players of years past. So I think he'll end up being a decent move for what he is, and I do like some of the unlocked talents that Kalinin brings.
Yeah, I think to hit on Kennedy first, it'll take him time to get the system. Realistically, he's a fourth liner. I think the Farnham experiment, as much as we love him, probably should come to an end once the guys like Ruutu and Talusti are back, which, who knows how much they can produce. But Kennedy is a solid player. He's shown that he can play in a couple different systems and be a contributor from the bottom nine, so why not? As far as Kalinin goes, he is very raw. I think you hit on that really well, where he has moments where he looks very good and in control, and then other times I think he tries to do too much. I think he's always kind of trying to make the more interesting play, or he doesn't know when to make a simple play versus, all right, I'm going to carry the puck in all by myself and get in deep and then hit a trailer or something like that. I think he'll learn that, especially because there's less ice and he's used to playing on the big ice for so long. Mm-hmm. He'll need to adapt, and I think he is. He's been better than he was when he first came in. I think also the fact is he's on the third line now with Jacob Josephson, and I don't know. No, I hate to hate on JJ, but
let's talk about Jake.
Yeah. Well, that leads us to a bridge there. He's still looking for his first goal. I guess that's all we really need to say so far about him. As much as he's a shootout wizard, and you know what? That might be good for a couple points this year. His lack of offensive production is alarming, actually, especially because He's had some good minutes with some decent players, and he just can't do anything.
Yeah, unfortunately, Jake Joe is never going to be. He's never going to live up to that first round billing, even though, my gosh, he's still so young. I mean, he was what? He was 20 years old his rookie year. I mean, he's still, perhaps there's still time, and I think maybe they'll keep giving him chances. He might be a restricted free agent this year. I can't recall, but I think they're still going to keep giving him chances. I will say this: he's one of the few guys who his stop and go. And again, this isn't saying much for a guy who's getting paid whatever he's getting paid. As far as balance, working on his edges and creating room, near the circle and below the goal line, as far as trying to shake defenders, he's one of the few guys who will actually turn the other direction on a team. That infuriated me so much in years past under DeBoer, that guys would just go below the goal line and they would just go till they went out of room. They wouldn't try and start and stop and start and stop again to try and shake their defenders. He's one of the best guys on the team at doing that. He protects the puck well. So I think there's still a role for him on this team. I think a lot of people were expecting him to take a jump this year. It's not going to happen. Even if he gets off the schneid, he'll have what? He'll finish the year with what? Maybe 5 goals. So he is what he is. He was a more trusted player under DeBoer. I mean, he was one of the top guys out there on the penalty kill.
Mm-hmm. But you know what's so frustrating, though, about it is that he does a lot of things right. Unlike Tedenby, where you're like, oh, he's not scoring, and he's a tiny guy who can't do anything. Joseph, he kills penalties. He's good in the shootout. He's strong defensively, even on 5-on-5 play. He sometimes can pass the puck pretty well. I mean, not that it's really led to a ton of assists, but it's like you really want to see him score because he has the intangibles.
Yeah, no, I think he's what you want as far as a player, as far as being a devil. I think he does the little things right, which is everything you want to see. And then he has some stretches where he plays well offensively, but maybe hasn't gotten a bounce yet. So we'll have to hope maybe that'll get him going once he gets that first one, and it'll give him some confidence, and he'll take off from there. 2 of the best players in the Devils this year have been John Moore and Mike Camilleri. Mike Camilleri has already surpassed his assist total all of last year. We know he scored a lot of goals, but when he wasn't sniping, really, he was almost not useless last year, but he didn't drive play, if you will, to use a quasi-analytics term in the hockey world. Now, he's going from blue line to blue line. He's making great passes in the offensive zone. I can't believe, but he's actually playing better than last year. I thought if you said, Mike Camilleri's 2014-15, if you can duplicate that for the next 4 years, I'd say that's well worth the $5 million every year. Now he's playing, he's playing almost like a $7 million player, which is extremely helpful when you have guys overperforming. And he's been awesome. He's made so many, I can recall, especially that whole line, just making so many backdoor passes, waiting for the trailer to come down the slot and get that big time chance. Him and Henrique have done that so many times this year. They've found each other on those great little mini stretch passes where they get quality chances alone, pretty much alone, point blank in the slot. There's been so many of those this year, and they've buried a lot of them. And then John Moore, I think we both said it during the summer that we liked that signing. Not only because it was a cheap contract, but we knew he's a good skater, solid defender, and he's one of the few guys on the team who can actually make something happen offensively. He has a good wrist shot to get through. He can play power play time. That him jumping up in the play the other night won them the game in Montreal. The breakaway by Adam Henrique leaves the puck behind for him, and then after he was stopped on the first try, he had something that bothered the heck out of me when I coached youth hockey. When I watched pretty much almost every NHL game, guys who are all alone, they take the first shot and then they're at the boards. The puck's still near the crease and they're at the boards, and there's nothing they can do about it. Him following up that chance. While he's still being He hasn't had the chance to show his talent. I think he's an extremely smart guy for a young guy. So those two guys have been, top 5 players on this team as far as MVP, as far as being valuable guys. Those two guys have been unreal.
Yeah, I mean, Camilleri, it's documented, and it's easy to see just from the points and what he does offensively every night. But more, I think you have to look at the subtleties of his game. What you just hit on now is that he has this ability. He's such a fluid skater that he makes the right and the easy play all the time. And he's not going to wow you with offense. I mean, sure, the goal the other night was really, really, really special. But he's someone who, if you're looking to build a team that's going to be a defensively, minded team, he's a perfect guy to be your second pairing kind of guy. And also, if Andy Green or Adam Larson are to go down at some point, guess who's going to be on that top line?
Yep.
It's going to be John Moore, especially for the amount of money that it costs to grab him. He's good. I mean, he's a really solid contributor who doesn't really make mistakes. Think of it as a Mark Fane, but way, way better. Where he doesn't do things that are on the stat sheet, but he actually is okay. I actually don't think Mark Fane was terrible. I'm going to throw that out there right now. But Moore's game is really something to like. For me, the biggest thing that I haven't liked about this team as a whole is the fact that they have not generated enough offense from their defense. Maybe they missed Zidlicki in that regard. Severson gets some shots through every now and then. I do think he's going to have some offensive upside. Larson has kind of shown that he is what he is. Green has actually been a little bit more active this year shooting the puck, but that's the one area where I think that they could get a little bit better. I mean, how many times do you see Merrill missing the net? You've even seen Jelena try to clap one and it goes off the glass. If he can't do that, what can he do? But we don't need to get into him. It is what it is. But that's the one area I think they could get better, though. If I really had to take one thing and say that that's their weak point right now, I think it's offensive production from the defense, not so much even the passing game, but the ability to shoot the puck and to create offense that way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that the passing really under Hines, it seems like if the talent's there offensive, well, the first 2 lines are out there. They really don't need the D to do anything offensively. They just need that first breakout pass where they can start rushing through the neutral zone, but it definitely shows when the 3rd and 4th lines are out there. Even guys like, Bobby Farnham last night against Colorado, where he comes up with a couple loose pucks and he feeds into the back line, but nothing comes out of it. And so it kind of shows a bit more how offensively challenged their defense is when the 3rd and 4th lines are out there. But yeah, I would agree. The passing has been there. They've done fine in that department. But yeah, the throwing pucks on net and helping get some rebound chances haven't been there just yet. Let's talk about the upcoming games. A few more games this month. I guess this year, because 2015 is almost in the books. So the Devils, really, after the tough part of the schedule, they now get a lot of winnable games on their docket. And now we spoke that, okay, they beat some of the best teams, but they've also had some really underwhelming performances against bad teams. They've lost twice to the Blue Jackets now. We watched the Colorado game last night. Now you get the Hurricanes twice this month. You see the Flyers. You see the Panthers twice this month. You'll get some tough teams in there. They'll see the Red Wings a handful of times. They get the Islanders. The Bruins are on the schedule as well. I know another game that should be a winnable game, Toronto. So there's a lot of games to close out the year where they should get, a few more wins and start creeping that point total up before we get to the new year. There's a lot of winnable games out there, Dave. And again, I think for the most part, win your handful of games, try and cut down the regulation losses. For me, that's the most important thing if they want to get to the playoffs. You lose games, that's going to happen. But if you can sneak a point out of an extra few games a month, that's going to go a long way. If you pick up maybe half dozen 8 points of games you should have lost in regulation, but you lose in overtime, you lose in a shootout, that goes a long way in getting towards a playoff spot. So there's a lot of winnable games here, a lot of games that are quality opponents, but no one that really overmatches the Devils on paper. So it could be a good month for the Devils. Outside of last night, if they pick up their play and really focus up here before the holidays.
Yeah, I think the expectations have completely changed for this team now. That though it's, quote, a rebuilding year, they've shown that they can play well enough to be in the conversation for the playoffs. So with that being said, I think that they're going to have to go out and win some of these games. Losing to Colorado at home after Colorado played a game that they had to try to make a furious comeback the night before. That's not a great loss. Were they terrible last night? No, but I think even if you're going to lose, and as you said, if they get the extra point out of it, find a way to tie that game. And if you lose, you lose in the extra session or the shootout. But they're going to have to get fat on some points at some point. You have to win 5 of 7, even 8 of 10, maybe even like a 7 or 8 game point streak at some point. You have to at some point make that run. It doesn't even have to be late in the year. You could get your separation early on, and that could be what you ride. But they have to at some point go on a little streak here. Are they capable of doing it? I'm not sure, because as much as they've had some really nice signature wins, I don't know if they've shown that they can go out and play 5-6 games in a row that are really good. But at some point, they're going to have to do that. I know you always talk about that, playoff teams and cup contenders, they all kind of have that long winning streak that sort of gets them going throughout the year. And I think that's what we'll need to see if they expect to be a playoff team. If not, it's going to be a dogfight. They're going to be fighting for that 8 seed, which might mean a trip to Montreal. Although, who knows, without Price, it could end up being Washington or the Rangers, which, hey, I'll take a first-round series against the Rangers. Let's go.
Sure, that's fine. Hey, if they get in, bring on anyone, because the Devils would truly be playing with house money. They would not be expected, really, to win any much series. If they get in the playoffs, bring on anyone. I don't care who it is. It'd be a lot of fun. Last thing I want to talk about, it's away from the ice, and I think it's, I don't know when this actually came out as far as them doing it, but the Devils, for their game on Thursday, are going to have all the dads of the players are traveling with the team. I would assume they're going to have them set up in a suite or something like that for the game on Thursday. This is the first time the Devils are ever doing it, and a few things. I think it's awesome. I've seen so many games, or the Devils have played in games where all the dads of the players have been there on your team, and I'm like, that's just so awesome. You're trying to build essentially, you're not just building a team, you're building a family, and to have the quote player family, if you will, have their actual family there and have them all bonding and just enjoying it. And it's so funny when you see those, when there's been like videos or gifs or whatever of dad sections like going nuts when their team gets an overtime victory or something like that. And it's awesome to see, because we don't see this side. We don't know about Steven Gianta's dad. Or
I wonder if he's as short as his sons are.
There's a picture online as we record this. He actually looks a little shorter. The angle is a little off, but it looks like he's about an inch or two shorter than Steven.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Henrik's going to have a field day with that one.
Yeah. Keep a look on that on the social media. He'll probably bust on him that his dad's taller than him, even though he may not be. But so I think this is awesome. And whatever, say what you will about Lou, about him, kind of keeping things in the room, if you will, and not really allowing too much from the outside to infiltrate his hockey players. But this is awesome. This is something that should have been done a long time ago. So I'm really excited that they get a chance to do this, that they're building a family type atmosphere amongst the players and amongst the the dads all going on the trip. So this is just fantastic on so many levels, and I hope MSG Plus, whatever, kind of goes. I would love, to me, that's almost as interesting as the game. I want to learn more about the players' dads, or I want to hear some interviews during the games on Thursday night. I think this is such a cool experience. Should have been done a long time ago, but I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how it plays out on the TV, reading some of the stories that'll probably come out today. This is something that's long overdue.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. We forget that this is a job and these are young men. And I think that it'll go a long way, and maybe not just for now, but if you think about it, for the future, this team wants to keep their free agents and they want to sign free agents. For a long time, under Lou, this was not a desirable place.
Yep.
I think they're changing that culture. I think that as much as this is for the players now, and I don't think they're doing it just to try to work for the future, having the dads come, but I think that there is certainly something that will help with because look, players talk. They all have each other's numbers. They're all texting. They all know each other from college, junior, other teams. This will go a long way, as one of many things, I'm sure, for the future towards making the Devils a more interesting place to play for free agents.
Let's hope this is again, there's been so many great changes this year, so let's hope there's more and new and exciting stuff on the way here in the 2015-2016 season. Well, I'll just about do it. Dave, any final comments? Any final word here?
I didn't get to get a bobblehead, and I'm kind of pissed, but I saw they're already going for like $50 on eBay right now.
That's it? I thought it'd be a lot more than that, considering how much stuff Devil stuff goes for online. Was it those Marty tickets were going for like $300 right after the announcement on the secondary market? So I'm very surprised people aren't shooting a bit higher. Now what? There's Corey Schneider and who's the other one? Yeah, there's another bobblehead.
I think there's 3. I think it's Schneider and maybe I want to say Camilleri. I could be wrong on that though. I know that it's like a set of 3. Actually, there's a couple that are. There's one for $41 right now, another for $40. All right, so they're affordable if you want one and you weren't able to go to the game.
Yeah, it's not a bad Christmas gift if you need to pick something up. Now, I don't know about you, but I couldn't help myself. So I saw whatever it was on social media or the Devil's website that extraordinarily bigger than human sized bobblehead they're actually giving away, the Adam Henrique one. I signed up to win it. I think they're just drawing a name or whatever. All you have to do is go sign up on the Devil's site, and they're making it really nuts. If you give for every 5 friends you send the website to through the Devil's website, they'll give you an additional entry for your email address. So
wow,
yeah, it's crazy.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, so I threw my name into the mix on that because that would be something I'm sure my wife would love to put up in our small apartment, is to have a life-size, bigger than life-size Adam Henrique bobblehead doll just nodding its head all day. I'm sure it's but for me it would be hilarious. I really want it more than a lot of things in life right now.
All right, one more random tidbit here. Go on the Anaheim Ducks website. Their splash page is getting ready for the Star Wars release, and it's absolutely ridiculous. They have Corey Perry as Han Solo. Ryan Getzlaf is dressed as a Jedi, and they have Ryan Kessler with one of the X-Wing pilot hats. It's absolutely fantastic. It's really good. I mean, it's so ridiculous, and it's fun. I would hope that the Devils, maybe not necessarily Star Wars, but can have this kind of fun with something in the near future. Because look, we're playing a game, enjoy it, have a good time, and I'm sure that's what the Ducks are doing there. I really can't get over Ryan Getzlaf's bald head with the robe on top of it, but hey, that is what it is.
The helmet on Kessler is just and with the shield is just fantastic.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So it's apparently Star Wars night out at the pond tonight, so hopefully they'll enjoy that. All right, for Dave Turner, I'm Jeff O'Connor. We'll speak to you soon, folks. If we don't speak to you before the holidays, enjoy them. Happy New Year to all, and we will see you in the new year on the Devils Insiders podcast.